It's Two on the Aisle with me, Charles Gross, and Leslie Hoban Blake. Tonight reviews of Fiddler on the Roof in Yiddish, Kiss Me Kate in English, Nantucket Sleigh Ride in Nantucket, The Mother, and Daddy. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Two on the Aisle. And how are you, Leslie?
Well, I have this slightly black and blue mark from having a shelf of glasses fall on my face, but other than that, I'm fine. Thank you, Charlie, for asking.
Right. She went to her doctor, and he said, try to avoid having glass falling on your face.
Yes, they're wonderful that way. They really, they have great things that they can say.
Yes.
But I think it's interesting because you say fiddler in Yiddish, and I call it Yiddler. I'm sorry, that's my joke, and I'm going to stick with it.
Yiddle with a fiddle.
Indeed, and I think we saw that at the
Volksbühne,
the
maybe?
Volksbühne. I believe so.
Now, in case you're wondering, didn't they do that already? First of all, thank you so much for watching. And second, yes, we did. But the show has been such a big success that it's been moved uptown, not to Broadway, but to the Little Schubert Theater on 42nd Street.
And it's as before. Well, I'm not going to get off on this tangent. It came up and it's wonderful. It was in an arena kind of stage downtown when we saw it. So I had a little. I wasn't sure if it would work on a proscenium, but it's fine on the proscenium. Very minimal staging. Paper on which are the scrolls of the Torah, 2 banks of translation machines. And that's it. And then, of course, the actors. And it's all about the actors, and they bring on the furniture, and they take off the furniture in great Royal Shakespeare Theatre style.
You know, just to interrupt you briefly, this was directed by Joel Grey, who's probably best known as the MC in Cabaret. And, you know, you recall Bartlett Shear, who did My Fair Lady this past season, did a Broadway version with Danny Burstyn.
Indeed.
And he tried to innovate it a little, as much as you can innovate with Fiddler. And I thought he did a good job, but I think Joel Grey took what Shear did, and he brought it to fruition. He really
I don't think that Joel Grey had anything to do with what Bartlett
Well,
Shear
maybe
did.
not.
This is all Joel Grey's concept.
All right, fair enough. But
it's a different script.
Well, no, it's a different language.
Here's what the difference is. Bartlett Shear tried to make it more about today. At the end of his, there's a diaspora of everybody, and then you realize that there's mass migrations all over the world right now. That isn't.
No.
Joel Grey went back to this play as if it was in a shtetl now, from that time. There was no trying to make it into something it's not.
Right, but what my point being, they each tried to do a newer version of Fiddler, and I think
he went back. What they did was they retranslated it back to.
They took the 1965 version that had played in Israel. So this is not a new translation. It's a very old translation, but it does not hear word to word.
No, and in fact, in your head, you're singing the lyrics that you know in English, and they don't translate to what you see.
No, they have a literal translation there, and it can be very different at times. But what I'm saying is that they don't have the turntable, for example, that every production has had.
This was a very low budget production that they put together.
But again, it feels so fresh, I guess is what I'm trying to say.
Well, yes, I know.
They're trying to do a fresh version, and they really succeeded. I think more so than the Broadway version.
To do a fresh version. I think.
Well, maybe
but
they
did.
Just
did. I think it was just. I think because it was new eyes on an old script, and by going back to the original and changing it so you don't have it stuck in your head the way it was, I think that helps it a bit too. And then the cast is so divine, and this whole cast moved together. And of course, the interesting thing is Joel Grey was offered a role. Do you want to play Muddle? They said. You want to play,
I don't
Laser
think.
Wolf.
I don't think Muddle would have
Laser
been.
Wolf or something like that. And he thought,
or maybe Tevye.
No, he was never offered Tevye. Okay. That was not on the. To the best of my knowledge.
All right.
And he wouldn't have been right for Tevye. He doesn't have the gravitas for Tevye. There's just no way.
Well, Stephen Skybell certainly does.
Yes, he does, and that's what he is and mind you, he's been in the theater for 25 years. This is not a young guy, but this is an actor, with tremendous ability and great. He's not a great singer, but he doesn't have to be a great singer.
You don't have to be for Tevye. Zero Mostel was not a great singer.
Well, Zero Mostel ruined this play. I saw him do it twice, and he ruined it. He played. We took my grandmother, who was a little Russian Jewish lady who had come from Russia. She was not living in a shtetl, but she came from Russia in the 1920s, and he he played to the audience, and if a joke worked, he came back and he did it again. I mean, he was doing vaudeville, and it was only
he certainly brought out the comic aspects.
only
of
actors
Tevye.
like Herschel Bernardi and some others played Tevye as a sympathetic character, not a comic.
I liked. I
caricature.
saw Bernardi. I saw Mostel.
Yeah.
I think I liked Mostel better actually, but I also saw Topol, who.
The movie Topol.
No. On stage, I
you
saw
saw
him.
Topol
I
on
actually
stage.
liked
In
him better
Israel,
on. No, here he
I
did
didn't
a
know he did
revival
it
here.
here.
Yes.
I didn't
And
know
I
that.
think I liked him better on stage than I did in the
In the
movie. I
movie?
haven't seen the movie in a long time. I actually planned to see Zero Mostel, his final performance as Tevye. The revival was recorded.
Well, this is not talking about
no.
what we're talking about. The review. There is no way to really
It's a
review
good
this.
show.
Yes, and the scene. I mean, Danny Burstein, I thought was magnificent as
I
Tevye,
agree. I
and
agree.
he deserved his Tony for that and didn't get it, and I
Absolutely.
was very unhappy about that.
Yeah, as was I. No, that was an excellent production.
Yes.
But so was this. But this one, more intimate because it's in a smaller theater, but much more emotional. I mean, I've seen
That's the thing.
pretty
It
much every
taps into
production
the emotional
of
quality.
Fiddler, and I was almost in tears
Yes,
seeing this.
yes.
And that, again, I know everything that's going to happen in this show. I saw the original production, although not with Mostel. I saw the revival with Mostel, etc. And really, and I was thinking, and I thought after sitting through this for the second time, after the first act, I said, well, the Yiddish novelty is worn off, but I still found myself so
Very
engrossed
emotional.
with this show.
And it's interesting because the young guy playing the Russian,
Fietka.
whose name is Cameron something, I think. It will come to me. Cameron Johnson, who is not Jewish, and who has been in several productions that we've seen. He was in Golden Land and something else. It's so wonderful as this guy caught in the middle of the two cultures, wanting so much to have Chava. Is it Chava?
Chava.
And he's not a character I've ever felt particularly sympathetic to, but I did. He made it a sympathetic character, and I thought, isn't that wonderful that they could take the time to do that? Anyway, if we're going to talk
I also
about
found Jennifer
Babiak
as Golda, a little less June Cleaver, a little more as a traditional sharper Golda.
Never thought of her as June Cleaver. I've always thought of her as sharp.
Well, in the previous, when I saw her do it downtown, she was a very bright
mean her? Oh,
Golda.
I see.
Yes,
Oh.
she was. To me, she was Golda by way of June Cleaver.
No,
She's more of a traditional Golda now.
And Jackie Hoffman, of course, as Yenta.
As Yenta,
She's better now.
I think so.
Yeah.
I thought she was too restrained downtown.
Yeah, she's let herself go,
she's-
but not so that she's out of character.
No.
This is an ensemble piece, even though it's
Yes.
a gigantic ensemble. Everybody is playing to do the show. There's no number of stars we can give it.
But we will give it 5.
We will
because
give it
that's as high
5
as we go.
playbills. Well, no, I go 6 or 7. It's like dialing it up to 12. I could do that.
Absolutely.
Anyway, moving on to another revival.
Yes.
I'll hold up
Another
the color
revival,
version
and
of it.
this is Kiss Me, Kate, one of my favorite musicals. I have such fond memories of the production that they did 20 years ago. And I was so excited.
Now, is that the Stokes Mitchell
That
and
was
Marin
the Stokes-
Mazzi? Okay.
Yes,
Okay.
it was. In fact, I'm in a dilemma. I realize I don't have the cast album, and I'm trying to figure out which one I should buy, assuming I can find them all.
This one now or that one?
Or possibly the original with Alfred Drake, if you can find it.
I may have that one because I
okay.
inherited my father's record.
We'll have to. All right. Well,
I'll see if you can make a copy.
That'll
I'd
be an
happy to
off-camera
let you have it.
discussion.
Okay.
So maybe I'll have 2. This is Kelly O'Hara and Will Chase as a couple, I'm told, based on Alfred Luntland Fontaine.
Right. Who did The Taming of the Shrew? There are photographs of them doing The Taming of the Shrew.
This is based on the Shakespeare play Taming
And
of
Alfred
the Shrew.
Lunt, was never a romantic leading man. He was portly, and to see him playing Petruchio was really funny, and in tights and all of
I'll
that.
have to
But
take
she
your
was
word for it.
lovely. She was quite the thing.
Right.
Sorry. Didn't
And
interrupt.
this so Will Chase and Kelly O'Hara play this couple who were married and are still in love, even though it's been a year since they were divorced.
Well, you don't know if they're still in love. They're
we
doing
know.
this show together. Well, we find
We
out.
know.
We're discovered as they discover.
Yeah.
They don't come together on the show to be in love. She has
She has a new boyfriend. He desperately needs this show to work. Again, they're doing Shakespeare's Taming of the Shrew, and this has been quote-unquote updated. Basically, the only updates I could see, there's this one scene where
Amanda Green, Adolph's daughter,
yes,
has written in, instead of saying, I am ashamed that women are so simple, she says, I'm ashamed that people are so simple.
right now. In the previous version that we saw with Mary and Maisie, she sang it as written, but then she looks at her sister Bianca and with a "Don't you believe it" look.
Right.
And that was fine, and that worked very nicely. The other thing that they've changed is there is one scene where Kate, again here played by Kelly O'Hara, gets spanked.
Yeah.
Now, before she gets spanked, she's beating up on her husband. She's slapping him. She's kicking him. So, no one is saying, well, the guy was kind of acting in self-defense. So here, in order to make it more politically correct, she kicks him in the rear. He kicks her back in the same place. Ultimately, same result, I suppose.
And they both walk off rubbing their backsides.
Yes.
Well, here's the thing. I was not happy with either of these actors in these roles. They were not big enough for these roles. If there was ever a place to overact and be bigger than life, this was it. So Kelly O'Hara, I thought, would be perfect in this role. She's too sweet. I never got the real Vanessa. Isn't that her name?
Her last name is Vanessa.
Vanessa.
Yes.
I never got the real
I think it's
Lily
Lily.
Vanessa.
Yeah.
Never got that character because
Really?
she's a bitch. She gets really she comes on and she's, I'm a star and don't you
And
go
I
near
hate
me.
men. Great number.
Well, when she does that, I mean, that's not her singing
No,
it. That's
that's
the
Kate.
character singing it. But as playing Lily Vanessa, she's never big enough for me.
Oh, now I really
Okay.
enjoyed her. I thought her gifts were used here more than in any other thing I've seen her. I mean,
I thought South Pacific
her
was-
voice,
South Pacific was
her voice. She's got this
And The
beautiful
King and I. She was
operatic
perfect in
voice,
those.
and the comic timing that she has there.
But
I mean, I loved her in both those other
Now,
plays.
the
but this
secondary
really
characters-
puts her to work. Wait, we forgot about Will Chase, who I also liked.
not big enough.
Well-
Not big enough. Very wonderful singing voice, I have to say. But in terms
Yes,
of
but he's got to compete with Alfred Drake. Oh, not with Alfred.
well,
I'm sorry,
Stokes
with
Mitchell. He's got to
with
compete
Stokes
with-
Mitchell, and with
and
Alfred
Alfred
Drake.
Drake, that's right.
Yes, and that is a problem.
And Kevin Kline, did he not do it? Well,
Not
maybe
that I'm
maybe
aware
he
of.
didn't do it. Maybe I'm
Not
making
that
that one
he'd
up.
be
Okay.
good at it.
He would have been.
Yes.
He never had the singing voice for that, though. So I was disappointed in the 2 stars, and that you don't have your 2 stars.
I did.
Man. It's,
I did like them.
You did.
Yes,
Well,
I
okay.
did.
But the
Corbin
secondary
Bleu.
characters, Corbin Bleu and Stephanie Stiles in the
Yes.
Lois Lane and Bill. Is it
Yes,
Bill?
his name is Bill.
Bill. Roles were
Yes.
fantastic. Bill is a dancer in the show, and of course Corbin Bleu is a dancer, and they really tailored this to his
Yes.
particular.
He literally dances on the ceiling, and without the special effects
Yes.
that Fred Astaire had
Yes.
when he did the same thing.
Yes. And she is a hoot and a half when she does the I'm always Judy and Darling in my fashion. Now, the problem is updating this show. The show was written in the 50s. Leave
40s.
it in,
40s.
it was written in the 40s. You're absolutely right. Leave it in the 40s. It was closer to 50, though, because that general character was based on Dwight D. Eisenhower, the boyfriend.
Well, interestingly, I'm not sure if he was a general originally. Because I was going to save this to the end, but I happened to
a
find
congressman, I think he was, maybe.
he businessman.
Oh, okay.
And
never
there
mind
is a version of it. Well, you know what? A version of it on Amazon with the original Broadway cast, at least the 2 leads, Alfred Drake, and I forget who played Kate.
Morrison. Can't
It's
think of her first name, but her
it's
last name
pared
is
down, so it's
Morrison.
like an hour and 10 minutes. So some of the numbers, like Too Darn Hot, are not included. But it's a really, I mean, if you want a traditional Kate, I didn't think it would hold up. It did, and brilliantly. But we'll get back to that. Let's get back to this one.
Well, the point that I was going to make, though, is by updating it at all, you lose what it's about. By trying to make it PC, you lose what it's about. The Taming of the Shrew has been a problematic play since the 1930s, maybe. Since any type of
Certainly,
you can't hit me.
Certainly, they tried to update it when they did it in the park a few years ago.
Well, they changed. Made it all female, that was their way of saying, okay, well, this will be more palatable, and it was quite interesting.
It was.
There's also a Marowitz version of just The Taming of the Shrew, which is just the parts where he's doing bad things to her, and it runs half as long as the play, and it's horrible. He does terrible things to her. But that's Shakespeare. That's not,
But that was never what Kiss Me Kate was about.
Except that the scenes, those scenes that take place are lifted right out of it. They really are about that. When the three lovers going after Bianca, it's just that it's set to music, and we don't have Bob Fosse. But But
But
that
we do have some really good dance numbers.
we have some very good dancers. And then there are the two henchmen who come in.
And this is a Warren Carlyle who choreographed,
Yes.
Scott Ellis.
who
And I should
directed.
say that Sam and Bella Spiewak
Spiewak.
did the book.
Yeah. And okay, and it's Cole Porter's music. There's the music.
And
is
it's one
divine.
of his best scores.
And in this case, you have the two men who they don't even have names. They're the
Yes.
two henchmen who come
Yes.
in. John Pankow plays
two
one.
Damon Runyon type
Yes,
who could
exactly.
have come right out of Guys and Dolls, except this preceded Guys and
Right,
Dolls.
and Lance
This
Cody
is,
Williams was number 2, but the other
and
was
then
John
John, Pankow,
who
right.
everybody knows from that television show with Helen Hunt. I've forgotten the name of it.
Mad About You?
Yeah, Mad About You. He was the friend.
Oh,
John
okay.
Pankow was the friend on that show.
Okay. And they do one of my all-time favorite
Yes.
musical
Yes.
numbers. Brush
Brush
Up
Up
on
Your
You. It's a
Brush Up
hilarious
Your
number
Shakespeare, no
that is
on.
just too rushed here and does not hit.
Well, it's not because it's too rushed. It's because they're not the right people to play it.
All right.
You,
Well,
you,
getting back to the
I was unhappy
to
with
the
casting,
version
except
on.
for Corbin Bleu and Stephanie Styles. I got to tell you.
I did like Kelly O'Hara, and though I will say, if you compare it to what you'll see on Amazon, I have to say, except for the fact that Amazon had to cut it, this was a television version made of it.
Do you remember who was in it?
Alfred Drake.
And
I forget.
Morrison, the same one.
Yes,
from
yes,
from,
yes,
okay,
yes.
She just
Pretty
passed
much,
away.
but much of the same cast that was on Broadway doing it 10 years later. And interestingly, this came out, I think, 5 years after the movie version.
What would you give this particular one that we just saw?
I was disappointed
Yeah, me too.
because this should have been a 5 playbill show.
Absolutely.
But I will give it 4 playbills because Kiss Me Kate is just
Yeah,
there's
I'd
a
go
lot
375. I'd
to
go
it.
375. I'd give 4 to Corbin Bleu and Stephanie Styles.
Right.
But I'd only give
And
it.
I would say yes, you should see it, but also if you subscribe to Amazon, catch that version
I did want to say one thing.
because you also have Harvey Lembeck, I think. Lembeck, who was Eric
Harvey
Von Zipper
Lembeck,
in
yeah.
the
But-
Beach Movies, and Jack Klugman from The Odd Couple as the
Yes, and they were
henchman.
very funny. But here's the thing. I
Yes.
did want to say one thing.
Okay.
The other play that was problematical was Carousel.
Yes.
Both of these are plays about men who abuse women. They are.
Well,
Much
no, this
more
is a
so
play.
in Carousel.
This is a play. No, this one is a play within a play where he abuses the woman. He doesn't abuse her.
But he
you know.
does, because he was a womanizer. There are all kinds of ways of abusing somebody.
Well, it's a
about-
little different.
Yes, but it's both of them are plays of their time where some of this stuff was allowed or was thought of to be cute, or and that's not allowed anymore. So it's interesting that people loved Carousel. I did not. I had trouble with Carousel from the get-go on this. And I love the music. I would have loved nothing more than encores. I thought to myself, let them do encores on this too. And then you don't have to worry about the spanking because it doesn't have to be on there. That's all. I just wanted to get that little bit in. So we're moving from...
Well, you didn't. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, we did. Well,
Yes,
I
we did.
I
We
said
did. We did.
3.75. We're moving from revivals to a brand new play by John Guar.
Yes.
And I'm really happy about that. I don't know which one. Well, I'll show both of these. This is actually supposed to be John LaRoquette sitting in a boat being pulled along. And these are the whales pulling him along. And that's
Right.
the whole point. The name of it, Nantucket Sleigh Ride, comes from the old whaling days when if you caught a whale, it could pull you until either the whale died or the people on the ship died, on the boat
This
died.
is after the whale was harpooned.
Yes, after, yeah.
This is a flashback play. We see Lorquette's character years.
Whose name
cur-
is
current-
Gowrie, which is a way of saying Guar. If you look at the letters in Guar, it could be pronounced
He had
Gowrie.
He wrote one play which people still remember.
Everybody
and people,
remembers.
And he sometimes denies being the playwright, but now but since that play, he's been a very accomplished businessman. All of a sudden,
Because he wasn't able to write it.
two young people come from his past show up, and we find out why he went to Nantucket.
There was a Nantucket Players production of his famous play that he didn't go to see. And so everybody in that production hates him. And they feel he ruined their lives in one way or another because they all thought that this play was the most brilliant thing and it was going to make their lives wonderful. That's one of the characters they play. And then they play other characters as well. The leading characters in this, of course, are John LaRoquette. And then the other leading character, and by the way, Doug Sills I don't know if you remember Douglas Sills in The
And,
Scarlet
of
Pimpernel.
course I do.
Yes, okay. Well, Douglas Sills.
But this story is told in flashback.
It's told in different things that happen, but they don't happen sequentially necessarily.
Right. We are getting a little low on
well,
time, so
one of the characters, this play goes from whaling, from Nantucket and whaling to Walt Disney after he has been cryogenically frozen.
which actually never happened, but
to
keep
a
going.
lobster. And these are these are some of the characters. And Doug Sills plays Walt Disney, who is
Yes.
and John LaRoquette is in a Nantucket home of someone who was like Lemony Snicket. He wrote books that scared the hell out of children, and so these two actors play the children.
Right. And it's kind of an Alice in Wonderland experience for LaRoquette's character.
And they lure him up to this place, and there has been a pedophile thing going on in that house.
Well, he's lured up because he bought the house sight unseen as an investment.
Right.
And because of these he has to go investigate what's been going on in this house.
Right, and he finds out that there was a pedophile ring going on in the house, and then these children show up, and because the children show up, he doesn't want to be left alone in the house with the children, and they're treating him like a father, and so anyway, it's very and then he reads all the books.
It's very strange.
It's a strange, but I thought wonderful play, and Will Swenson, whom I adore, is this almost. What is it in Hitchcock? It's always the MacGuffin. His name is McPhee, and he's almost like a MacGuffin. Does he exist? Does he not exist? But he's Will Swenson, and I adore Will Swenson. He was in
Something else.
the opera, the Jerry Springer opera. I just think he's wonderful. So anyway, I had a wonderful time. I didn't care whether it went here, there, or the other place. I thought all the actors were terrific, and I thought the writing was fun, and I just enjoyed it. And it's interesting because my favorite play of his is a Man of Color, the one about the Louisiana Purchase and what it was like to be a black person.
A Free Man of Color?
Free Man of Color.
John Grier wrote that?
Yes, he wrote that. Yes, I wouldn't say that if I wasn't sure of it this time. Okay. And so I just thought that this was in the same way of
my favorite. I actually did not like A Free Man of Color. My favorite of his works is House of Blue Leaves, I think. Although I did enjoy the 6 Degrees of Separation revival much more than I enjoyed the original. It can be very confusing. It kind of comes together at the end, but it can be a very confusing, and it is. A Nantucket Sleigh Ride is a wonderful way to describe it because it really
if you stay with either you stay with it or you die.
Yeah, something like that, or the play does.
But I would give it 4.5. I thought the casting was terrific. I thought Jerry Zaks directed it.
Yes.
And
well, John LaRoquette was certainly excellent.
Oh, well, yeah, but I mean more than just John LaRoquette was excellent. It was. I just thought it was.
I think play. 3 3/4 would be.
Okay. Well, I enjoyed it more than you did.
Yes, you did.
Now we come to
something I'm not sure either of us enjoy.
Yeah.
This is The Mother.
Written by the same person who wrote The Father, that starred
Frank Langella?
Frank Langella, right.
In fact, we're going to have a father play coming up next.
Yes.
This is by Florian Zeller, translated by Christopher Hampton and directed by Trip Coleman with Isabelle Huppert and Chris North from Sex and the City.
Chris Noth. There's no R.
Oh, no.
N-O-T-H.
Chris Noth from Sex and the City and The Good Wife, among other things. And it's a very strange. I mean, if you thought this was strange, this is really strange. It's
There's a couch that runs from one side of the theater to the other, a gigantic sectional.
Yeah.
That's the set.
Yeah, and she plays a mother,
an upper class, obviously woman, very well dressed.
And basically the play is the same, like 2 or 3 scenes done over and over, but just slightly different. And the gist of it is her husband is leaving her, and her son, who is an adult, is has a girlfriend, and he's going to be with her, I think. Because there's one scene where the girl is actually with the father. So it's very confusing, but the gist of it is she's losing everybody, all the men in her life.
Well, the one actress plays both the boyfriend's girlfriend and the husband's
I wasn't
girlfriend.
Sure whether she was supposed what she was.
I believe
and
that's
there
how
are,
that works.
Different, again, variations on what is happening.
But if you remember, that happened in The Father as well. The man's mind was disintegrating, and so a scene would be played, and then he would lose things in the next scene.
But that's... again, I don't think it's meant for her to have. Again,
she's having a nervous breakdown.
Right. Apparently,
so
I mean,
every scene is.
It gets a little weird because there's this one
It's
scene
a
where
lot
she's
weird.
pawing her son and lying on top of him.
She's trying to keep him, and she will keep him in any way she can, no matter how embarrassing it is to us sitting in the audience.
Haven't they ever heard of guilt in France? Or wherever this is taking place?
Well, it's taking place in America.
It works very well for Jewish and Italian mothers. Most mothers, actually.
So she's
anyway, this was extremely strange and very weird. I'll give it.
And difficult to sit through because it was, bordered on boring. I adore this woman. I adore Isabelle Huppert. I got to interview her. I got to take her to lunch. I think she's divine, but I did not like this play.
I did like her. What Chris Noth was doing in the play, I don't know. It really wasn't much of a role.
No.
He did it fine. He's very good at doing the philandering husband. But
this actually is. This is it. This is she fractures, she shatters, and that's what happens.
I'm ready for my close-up, Mr. DeMille.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, this play is not.
So
let's say 2.5.
Maybe 3 for her, 2.5.
You have less than a minute.
Okay, I have less than a minute. This is a play by the same guy who wrote Slave Play. It's called Daddy. It's a very naked play. I'm serious. Alan Cumming and this young black actor are naked half the time. There's a real pool on stage. It's directed by someone named Danya Tamor. I don't think she quite had a handle on it. But boy, the set is gorgeous. The lights are fantastic. It's about a rich older white guy who picks up this young artist at a party. And the next thing you know, they've moved in together. And the young artist, it's kind of like, who's teaching whom? The older guy thinks he's teaching the younger guy. The younger guy is actually changing the older man's kind of art in the house and doing other things. But it's also about being gay and being black and long. It had 3 acts.
Kind of like 6 Degrees of Separation.
And it's the play that Jeremy O. Harris, who wrote Slave Play, wrote to get into Yale. He's graduating from Yale now. There was a talk back at the end, and I actually stayed.
And your conclusion, because we are out
of
time?
Well, not as good as Slave Play, but fantastic, and a lot of. I'm telling you, Alan Cummins is a good-looking man.
Okay.
That's all
I'll take your word for it.
I will give it 3.75.
Okay, so we're doing much better with Daddy than we are with the mother.
Yes.
And that is our show for this evening. When you go to the theater, look for Leslie and me, us too.
On the aisle.
According to the Kinsey Report, every average man you know